Welcome everyone. I'm your host, Rashida Poonawala, and you're listening to the first ever episode of The Career Spotlight, a podcast that highlights the different paths of many successful people. Today we have the one and only Carson Daly. Carson is one of the biggest TV personalities in America. Over a career spanning almost 3 decades, he has done it all, from radio to MTV to hosting a late-night television show and New Year's Eve special. And now, as executive producer and host of the popular singing show The Voice, and features anchor on the Today Show. What you may not know is that he's also a mental health activist and has opened up about his own struggles with anxiety.
Very special for me to be here with you on your first podcast, so I'm honored. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So, for my first question, can you talk about what got you into the media industry? Why did you choose this path, and why did you continue on?
Gosh, it's so weird. I feel like the path sort of chose me. I remember, being young and in school, and I had a lot of friends. I played some sports. I really wasn't a great student. And as I got into junior high and high school, that became kind of clear that, I probably wasn't going to go to Harvard. Yeah. And so I just loved communication. I loved talking. I think I had a decent personality. I had friends of all walks of life. I was just kind of, more of a personality. I used to love getting together with my friends on the weekends. I was kind of like a party planner. I was an organizer. And I think these are all just sort of, skill sets that I had that ended up being something that, drove me to, being in the music business and being a radio DJ, and then ultimately getting into the media business and getting to NBC and kind of creating and producing television. It all started with, I think it was just based around my personality, and I just didn't have any other skill sets. I just was not good in math and English and science. Yeah. I wasn't good with money. I wasn't going to be like a stockbroker or anything. So I just stayed as close to music as possible.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not a science person either. Math, I can do. English, history, yeah. Science, just no.
Yeah.
I was when I was younger, I was I'm going to be a doctor, as everyone does. And then I was
right.
You know what? Business, journalism, something in that realm.
I think it ends up being whatever you're interested in and what makes you happy sort of becomes the nucleus of hopefully what you'll do. Because the truth is, waking up and really loving what you do every day is kind of the most important thing. Simply going to school to go to college to get a degree, I think kids feel that's just going to set me up for life, if I just do that. And that's not necessarily the case. There's lots of different paths for people. I'm a good example of that. I never even went to college. I did, but I dropped out, and I didn't have a formal degree or 4-year education, and I've been able to navigate life pretty well.
How did you kind of come up with that decision to drop out of college? Was your family supporting? Did you ever doubt yourself during that time period of your life?
I grew up at a time where my parents were very, my father passed away when I was really young, when I was 5. But my mom, who I adore, she passed away since, but my mom remarried. And so I have a stepdad. And my stepdad, I always say God gave me 2 incredible dads. He was an awesome guy. And he was a really hard worker, and he was more of an entrepreneur, and he, was like a go-getter and worked really hard. And my mom actually worked in the media business. She moved out to California to become an actress, then ended up in radio and doing a lot of things that I do now. So I had kind of 2 influences. I had this very sort of entertainment, theatrical kind of side in my mom, and I had this very practical business, work ethic side of my dad. And I think I kind of took from both of them. But yeah, the path was college, and everybody around me was going to college, and it wasn't in my cards. I went to a college in LA where I played golf, and then I just, looking back on it now, many years later, I have generalized anxiety disorder, and I have a panic disorder where I've had these panic attacks over the past 20 years, and I just didn't know what they were. Yeah. There was these times in my life where I get really, really scared, and I'd feel like I have to run away. It was really weird, but now I know what they are. So when I look back on my life, even looking way back to when I was in college, I really think the reason I dropped out one day was because I had a panic attack, and I just ran to my counselor and was like, I gotta get out of here. And it was less of a life choice, more of a flight or fight thing. And so, but it ended up being, is the best thing that ever happened to me. I think what these things that happen to us in our lives, whether we deem them as good or bad, ultimately just become these lily pads that we jump to, and they become they become who we are in our lives and our paths. So I've always felt like whatever path I was on, it was the right path for me.
Since you did, right now just mentioned you have an anxiety disorder and you struggle with mental health. That was actually one of my questions for later on.
Okay.
But
I brought it up, so you're jumping to it. That's
into
journalism 101, Rashida. We're on the topic.
So just talk about it.
Yeah, totally.
So can you talk about actually the importance of mental health and how you manage it? And especially since I'm assuming a lot of my listeners will be from my high school. Anything you want to tell them about that, how to kind of manage their stress and...
So let me just preface by saying for anybody listening who's younger, I'm 50 years old, and it was just hard to say because I think we all feel much younger than we are. But I can really relate to how I felt in high school and in my 20s and in my 30s. So I'm very in tune with, what seems like a long time to many of you, a long time ago, really, to me, it wasn't. So when I was growing up, nobody ever talked about their mental health. There was only your physical health. If you talked about your mental health when I was your age or I was in high school, it sort of signaled that something was really wrong with you, that you might be broken as a person. If you're having your brain could not be functioning correctly, and that could be, how you might not be able to live life the way you're supposed to, or be a husband or a wife or a father or hold a job because something's gone. It was very taboo. The movies that were around us, people who had mental health issues were depicted as being really crazy, wearing straitjackets. Yeah. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is a Oscar-winning film with Jack Nicholson, and it's that's what I grew up on, that idea. I didn't talk to my parents about the way I felt inside, or if I was scared. I had great communication. I had really loving parents. We talked a lot about if I was physically ill, but all the other stuff, it was never really discussed. There was a big stigma on it. And so, cut to many years later, we've made a lot of strides, but I have in the last 10 to 15 years have had a lot of self-discovery and gone to therapy, cognitive therapy, and have learned a lot about myself. There's lots of ways to get help. And so I've just been a big proponent of trying to help break that stigma of mental health, especially with young people, so that they realize that I for many, many years felt like I was kind of broken, something was really wrong. And now I know there was absolutely nothing wrong with me. Yeah. I just needed to, I need to do some things to manage areas of my life that keeps my anxiety low, and now I don't have problems with panic attacks, and I've actually found a medicine that works really well for me. And I have a very active, busy life, and I'm a great father of 4 and a wife. It doesn't impact my life in any way, shape, or form. In fact, in another conversation about mental health, I would go so far to tell you that even if I could go back and change, to not have generalized anxiety disorder or panic disorder, I wouldn't, because there's a lot of superpowers that come with that. There's 2 sides to anxiety. There's the worry side, and then there's the sensitive kind of nervous system side, and there's a lot of benefits to actually having this. A lot of our greatest Americans we know now had anxiety.
Am I talking about what are the, I guess, strengths to anxiety?
So in the animal kingdom, let's take just as an example, let's take a group of coyotes. They travel in packs, and they sleep at night outside. Yeah. What happens in that pack, the one coyote who has anxiety or panic disorder is the one that is nervous, right? And the one that can't sleep at night. It's the one that is mind is racing, all the things that happen to those of us that have anxiety issues. Well, it's going to ultimately be that coyote in the middle of the night who sees the threat coming. Let's say it's a bear in the wilderness or a lion or whatever it is. And it's going to be that nervous coyote that goes back to the pack and says, hey guys, wake up. Yeah. Guess what's coming? There's a bear coming. And, music and all these, I feel beauty really, really deep. And that's a really beautiful thing. When I'm hugging my children, the love is so great. I feel it so much. That's kind of that opposite side. In the same way, I could get really, really scared at times for no real reason. So it's kind of my superpower. I'm like Jason Bourne. When I walk into a restaurant or if I travel, I have to sit on the aisle when I fly. I know where the exits are. It's just the way I'm wired. So I'm like an escape artist.
That's I feel like that's really cool. You can think of it in 2 ways. You can think of it as something negative, and you can be I wish I didn't have this, and think of it in a negative way. But then I think the beautiful thing about it is how you kind of take a new turn to something positive, which I think is really cool and kind of really important to everyone has something going on, and if you're able to take that like negative thing and turn it into something like positive,
Right.
I think that's just something great.
And Rashida, you know what it is? Like for your generation and young people listening, you can control how you frame it. There's no right answer.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of perspective. So yes, you can choose to listen to society, but I've got this ailment, I've got ADHD, I've got this, I've got panic, I've got whatever it is. Like you can choose to look at it like you have some sort of disorder.
Yeah.
Or you can just it's just a matter of like how you choose to frame something.
Yeah.
And so you have that power to do that. I didn't know that you could do that. I thought like the world told you, like you got labels, right? But you don't have to have that.
You can kind of step out of the box.
You can step out of it and you can. You can
Read your
almost
own.
wear it like I wear it like a badge of honor. Now when I talk about it, I love who I am and I'm glad that I was made this way.
You can kind of write your own story, which I think is cool. Like nowadays, you can kind of, and I feel like nowadays a lot more people are talking about mental health.
Yeah.
Like, even in our school, we have a full like wellness center that like
Yeah,
wasn't here
so
when I was in
great.
7th grade, and now they created this for the middle schools, which I think is just like really cool. And
Also, who cares what people think? You have
Yeah.
to. I know it seems like everything when you're 12 to 18, like what people's opinions of you, but like at the end of the day, like being self-sufficient and having like self-knowledge and self-love and just understanding like this is who I am. That's all you need, in your family and your good core group of friends. You don't even need that many to feel heard and seen. So it's like, who cares what people think?
Yeah.
You have to get over that. Not you personally, but like
yeah, no,
you in general.
yeah, no. Even for me, like when I first started the podcast, I had a best friend that I did it with, and I was like super open about sharing it with her, and she was a little bit more closed off and like afraid of like what people would think about her, and like didn't really want to tell others. But now she's starting her own like podcast on the side too because of that, and now she's like starting it up again. And
Are you guys still friends?
yeah, we're still like best friends.
Oh, good. Okay.
And it's just super cool now. Like she's kind of also like open to it and like not as closed off as she like used to be.
That's great. That's great. And that's probably, it's normal to feel that way too. People don't want to like be, not everybody's willing to be so open. Like I went on the Today Show on national television and talked about lots of things, that are embarrassing to talk about, stuff that makes me sound like a scaredy cat and a bad father. And I had a panic attack and ran away from my 3 little kids in a park once, like left my kids. Like that's embarrassing to say,
Yeah.
but it's a truth. It's reality. It happened. I'm not proud of it, but like I own it, and I'm better because of it. And sharing that, the really hard stuff, is the stuff that really connects with people, because it's okay to not be okay. Like we're all dealing with stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's the stuff that that links us together, that connection.
We're all human.
Yeah, totally.
So speaking of that, so now let's kind of transition over to like your career. So, I know that you kind of have jobs on both East and West Coast. You fly to LA to film the show, and then you're here for the morning show. So you want to talk about like your work-life balance? How do you manage being 2 different coasts every week? You have a family. Like, how do you do it?
These are great questions. This is better than like most interviews I do. So you're doing an awesome job, Rashida.
Thank you.
So good, and I so appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, look, balance has been a big word for me. I have a bunch of tattoos, as you can see here. The podcast world can't see them, but I have and they're all from my kids. I have tattoos from my daughter, my father, my niece, my son, stuff that means stuff to me. My grandfather's a Green Beret. So one of the tattoos that I've thought long and hard about getting, which I will at some point, is the word balance, because for the past 25 years of my life, that's the hardest part, is balancing, working really hard, and also keeping your health physically and mentally and spiritually. I'm Catholic. Come from a big faith-based background. It's a really important part of my life, my relationship with God. That's important, and so that requires attention. My physical health requires attention. Not eating and drinking myself to oblivion. I have to watch that. And then my mental health, which we've already touched on. So those things are hard enough to deal with. Then it's like you put in your work where you're lucky enough. I'm the luckiest guy in the world, Rashida. I get to work at The Voice in LA, this super fun television show that I host and produce. And I was there last night in LA and flew all night and just got to New York today. And I get to go to the Today Show tomorrow with the Rockettes and the Christmas tree. And I'm the luckiest person alive. So I never complain about it. But the reality is it does require work-life balance. It's always a struggle, but I'm really lucky that I've got a lot of people around me and I have a lot of assets that enable me to be able to have a calendar where I don't, I prioritize. I don't miss my kid stuff. I landed at 5:30 this morning. The first thing I did was drive home and then be there for my kids when they woke up, got them ready for school. I drove Jackson to school this morning here, and got the girls off to school, and then I went and took a nap. So like being there tonight, my daughter Etta is 11 years old and she's in 6th grade and she's got a school concert tonight. That's another reason I came back. I'm not going to miss that. So those are the priorities. You get your priorities straight and then you just you execute. But let me also just say about work. Okay. Work's a weird word because they say if you love what you do, you've never worked a day in your life. Yeah. And going back to those of you that are trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up. I never wanted to be a celebrity. I never wanted to be famous. I never wanted to be on television. I just loved music and I loved the way it made me feel. And so I stayed in radio and then that opened up opportunities in television and in media. So for those of you who are searching, just keep those, if it's volunteering, if it's working with kids, if it's working with the environment, if it's being outside, there's if it's being a park ranger, if it's getting into sports medicine. Sometimes you can find a field that's just close to what you love to do, cooking. So whatever your hobbies are, that's how I sort of did it. It's like, well, I love music, and it's like, let me be a DJ, and I DJ'd, and then it grows from there. So my advice is really to stick close to what makes you happy, and then you'll try and figure out how to monetize it later.
Okay, since you said you've been in this industry for a long time, how has the media landscape evolved in the last 10 years with the emergence of social media platforms like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and how do you see it changing in the next decade?
Rashida, it's changed I'm going to really sound like an old man, but it's changed a lot, and it's changed quickly. There was a time when critical mass, like you and me and the average person, didn't have an outlet to the world. And now they do with social media. And that's good and bad. I mean, a lot of highly unqualified people have access to lots of people. And so we have this issue with disinformation, and it's becoming harder and harder to tell what's true and what's not. There used to be a time where if it was printed, in a newspaper, or if you could read it, that means that it was probably true because the LA Times told you that it was. A trusted source took the time to print something, and then tabloids came up where they don't need to, have a record deal. There's tools for the average individual, no matter what you're passionate about. You can surge and make a business for yourself or a brand for yourself. Yeah. You can monetize that. There's influencing. All this stuff is brand new, and it's wonderful. But there's a lot of stuff about it and the technology that now, as we get into AI, that we're going to have to really be careful about. I think you're always going to need some sort of policing and watchdog with all social media. Yes, we all have our, everybody has a right to communicate, but we have to be careful with it too. We have to be responsible, I guess is a better word.
Yeah. So you have hosted the New Year's Eve special, and with the holiday season coming up, you want to talk about that experience? What was it like? Fun. Hosting the New Year's Eve show that everyone watches on TV.
Rashida, I started hosting New Year's Eve in 1997. I mean, that's how long ago in New York. And I've been on live TV, whether I was at MTV back in the day or on NBC, in Times Square for 20 out of 23 years. I only didn't do it a couple of years. I didn't do it last year. Things are a little bit different right now, but it's so much fun. My kids grew up in Times Square, being there for the ball drop, having live music, being at the epicenter of the world when the time changes. I was there for Y2K when we went from 1999 to 2000, and people thought literally at the stroke of midnight that banks were going to stop, and it was a really crazy time called Y2K, and everything was fine, thank God. Yeah. It's a really fun night. It's a lot of fun to be, especially in New York. Right after midnight, everybody's hugging and singing, and they're playing the New York, New York. Yeah. It's really special. I have fond memories of it.
Are you going to do it again this year?
I'm not, actually. I'm sort of out of work. I did it for so long. NBC does something else now. I don't even know what they do. I think Miley Cyrus stole my gig in Miami with some sort of party.
Yeah, Miley.
Yeah, thanks, Miley, my buddy. No, I love Miley. So I don't know this time, and I'm fine with it. My kids are at the age now where I love to spend time with them, at home, and I've spent so much time at MTV, especially at I've seen 50,000 concerts. I've been to a million parties. I've been to all of like the Oscars and Emmys, all the Hollywood stuff. And I'm so over it all. Like that's just doesn't really represent like who I am. It was all work related, that I really, really cherish the more quieter times now with my family and even with myself and being in my home. So I'll be happy to ring in the new year with my neighbor across the street.
Love that.
Yeah, and a bonfire.
Simple things in life.
Yeah, totally.
What is the most exciting thing about your job? I mean, like, if I were you, I'd be like, everything. You got to go to LA, New York, go to these events. Like, what do you find the most exciting thing about this job?
Well, two things. I never thought I would have a job this long. So the fact it's never lost on me that I still do what I do and I love what I do. So like I sort of wake up every day and I'm like, wow, I try and show gratitude. Like I can't believe, hosted The Voice last night on live television.
So cool.
And got to watch, Niall Horan and John Legend last night, for instance, sang a song together off Niall's record. I stood 10 feet and watched it, and they're friends of mine. And so there's a lot of pinch me moments, and I try and never let that be normal. I always remember, what it was like before I was ever in entertainment. So I'm really grateful for the friendships that I've made and for the jobs and the places that I get to be and the people I get to share them with. If you can't share them with people, it's kind of useless.
Yeah.
But I love music. So I'd have to say my most fun is really around, when I was in radio, I used to love when bands would come in and set up and sing live right in front of me, like acoustic in a radio station. That was always a thrill. And now on The Voice, watching the blind auditions, watching people from all over the country come up and have 90 seconds to try and get a chair to turn with their voice is like super fun for me as a fan just to watch. I'm with their families like freaking out, hoping they can get just a chair to turn. It'll change their life. Or if not, have to be there to kind of console them.
Yeah.
So yeah, the music stuff to me is still being on the Today Show. Today Show's nuts because like every time I go to work, there's something just random. They'll be like, the other day it was the like World's Ugliest Dogs show was there. It was like all these like ugly dogs. And then like the next day was like the Rockettes were there. And the next day like a huge actor was there. And then I usually cook. I do a lot of cooking on the Today Show. So it's so random and it's so much variety. It's so fun to wake up every day and to go to New York City to 30 Rock. Trees up right now. And then you don't really know what you're going to do. It's just fun.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
What is something that, even though you get blessed with all these cool opportunities and things, like, what do you still find, like, the hardest part of this job? Because, it is hard. You're traveling coast to coast. It could get overwhelming at times, like, having all these events, all these things to do. So, like, what is the hardest part?
I think the hardest part is that the job is so superficial in some regard. It's like, you're on TV. And the hardest part is I'm never off. I think the hardest part is there's no anonymity, especially now with like X and social media, everybody, I get into arguments with my wife a lot. I don't like when she posts pictures of my family and where we're at. Like I don't have like a safe space. If I do a magazine shoot, I just did one 2 weeks ago and they wanted to do it in my kitchen at my house for this People magazine thing. And I say, no, I really don't want the cameras in my house. Like when I'm in my house, it's my house. Yeah. I don't want America to like see my kitchen, or like that's where I sit at night. And it's the only thing that I have left. If you Google me, like my whole life is already there. Stuff I'm proud of, stuff I'm not proud of, people in my past relationships. It's personal, professional. It's all there.
Yeah. Which
is fine. Like that's the world we live in. I get it. But at my age now, it's hard to find privacy and just, I should probably move. Like when I'm done, when I retire, I'll probably live somewhere not necessarily on the coast. I have friends that have moved we love going to Blake Shelton's and Gwen. We love going to their place in Oklahoma. Blake's got a big ranch and it's just in the middle of nowhere. And my whole family loves it because you're just so out of New York and LA and paparazzi and, people asking for autographs and stuff like that. It's really refreshing to be in that world. So that's something but then again, that's not hard, right? Hard is, a single mother trying to pay bills, who has multiple children and they've got multiple jobs and they're trying to make the world work. That's hard work. So I'm careful with how I use the word hard. But for me in my world, that's kind of the challenge is to find privacy.
Also, I just want to say how casually you're like Blake Shelton. Like,
what's that?
You were just like, oh, so casually.
Yeah, I know,
Blake Shelton. I was like,
well, I didn't know who Blake was before we started The Voice because I didn't really listen to a lot of country music.
Okay.
We hired, when The Voice started, Christina Aguilera. Do you know Christina?
Yes.
So she was like the voice of my generation. Okay. She was like the voice. So we had to have her on the show. Then we had Adam Levine, who's from the band Maroon 5, and this guy, CeeLo Green. And then we needed one more coach for this first season of The Voice. We were like, oh, we should get a country guy because we kind of have like rap and R&B and pop and rock. And so we have this guy, Blake Shelton. Like, who's Blake Shelton? And like, no one had heard of him. Like, we don't care. Just we gotta start shooting this TV show so we can get it on NBC. And it's funny because it's, so many years later, Blake has become the biggest celebrity from the show. Yeah. And I'm very close friends with him. And I got to marry him and Gwen. Gwen and I have known each other for a very long time. We have history from when I was in radio and she was in a band, no doubt. So it just was really special. But they're great people. Cool. And, again, the Blake thing is awesome because Blake isn't from here. Like, he's not from entertainment. He's not from Hollywood. He's a country singer. That's what he is through and through. And so now when we're with him in Oklahoma or if we're in Nashville, so cool. It feels right.
So what is the hardest challenge you face and hardest challenge that you've had to overcome in your life?
Honestly, work-related or just challenges in general?
Anything.
A lot. I mean, a lot. The mental health stuff has really been really difficult on several fronts. Me trying to figure out as an individual and as a human, what was going on with my brain. And that took a lot. That took a long time. There's a herd of elephants outside this high school right now. Those darn boys. So like trying to, I went to cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT as it's known, and really I liked CBT because it teaches you. It's like you learn a lot about. So I learned a lot of the model of anxiety and what anxiety meant. And I've learned a lot about myself in the process. And I used to interview people on a late night show that I had, and I would have panic attacks. I could feel them coming on in the middle of my interviews. And and they were big celebrities that I was talking to, and I was really scared I felt like I had to run. I had to stop, and like it'd be like right now if I just like ran out of this room, and I'd be like, oh my God, Rashida's gonna kill me. She's gonna think I'm the biggest weirdo.
It's okay.
But like it just, and so like dealing with that is, been kind of challenging. But like whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human, and felt so blessed, and challenges, make us stronger. I welcome them. I'm not scared. I'm so tired of being scared because when you have anxiety, you feel scared a lot. And at a point, you feel like, all right, I'm so tired of being scared. Let me just figure myself out and start fixing stuff.
Did I hit all my questions?
I don't know if they were good. You had a lot of good ones. I never had that many good ones in a row, ever.
Oh, thank you.
People usually ask me just complete nonsense, like stuff that doesn't even matter.
Yeah, because I was like,
this is all rich, deep conversation about people's lives and.
Because that's what I want this podcast to be. I don't want it to be like I know you've been on interviews, and I know people ask you, oh, what do you do with your life? We know that. So I wanted to make these questions a little bit more
it's important to me, Rashida. That's why I want to do it, because I know younger people are going to listen to this. People like yourself and people who are at a place in their life, and I meet them, in my neighborhood, and I was that kid that I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I love to be able to talk like this. So not that what I say matters, but if it helps any one young person who might be nervous about the fact that they don't know what they want to be, or maybe there's something going on in their brain or their life. And I just want them to know they're going to be okay and that they're not alone. And I seem like I might have my act together because you know who I am or you see me on TV, but I promise you, there are times that I've really struggled, and that's okay. That's part of it. You're going to be okay. It bothers me to see young people who are scared that they're not good enough or they're not going to be okay, or they don't have it figured out, because there's so many people flexing on social media. And look at me, look at my life, look where I am, spring break, here, there, look and put out on social media. You compare it to your own life. And I don't have any of those things. And so I worry about young people's self-worth. Yeah. And I just, for what it matters from an old school head, I think you're incredible. I think you're amazing. I think you possess a lot of incredible talents that you may have not even discovered, and you are more than seen and heard, and you're going to do awesome. Even if your Instagram page doesn't look like the other people's. So really important.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I feel like that is a big issue nowadays. Everyone's on their phone posting what they did that day, where they're going, spring break. Everyone's on Instagram posting.
Right.
Even I will post things on my Instagram. But I've learned to realize that Instagram and social media is mainly a highlight reel of someone's life. You don't know. No one's posting in the corner when they're crying or if they got failed or mad. That no one's posting that stuff. Everyone's only posting the highlights.
Also, have to be careful. If your family does well, you got a really nice, expensive thing for Christmas and you're excited about it, so that you're at this point all right, do I post this or not? Just think, if you post this thing with some awesome, somebody in your group or some young person might see that, it might make them feel bad, because they don't have that. Yeah. So Do you really need to, it's like you have to put your ego in check. Be happy with what you have in quiet, in your own house. Like, you don't have to flex like that. It can make somebody really feel bad.
Yeah.
Use your social media power for good. Show a picture where like you got 2 of the same gift, then you decide to go give it to somebody who's deserving of it. Put that picture up.
Yeah.
I
feel like, especially nowadays, social media, like everyone has it, and I feel like it's just really important to kind of like use it for good. Like,
use it for good.
You have like people that are just like posting like kind of, I don't want to say useless, but like useless things on it, and you're like, this isn't helping anyone. This isn't making the world a better place. Like,
no.
Why are you doing this? Meanwhile, like, for example, like the podcast, or even if you like have an Instagram account, like post things that are going to help people and that you can do to like make the world a better place.
And Rashida, none of this is going to matter in 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
Like a lot of stuff you're learning in school, like that's not, unfortunately, I'm sorry to blow the bubble here, but like
in school.
Yeah, some of the stuff you're learning in school, like the math, like it's not going to be applied. It's not about the literal thing that you're learning in that algebra class. It's about training your brain to solve problems and to fix things. And so you'll be tested in your life, and the fact that you went through school will help you deal with that. But all this like view counts and who's got likes and all these these useless superlatives via social media, like my kids have it now. These like when you're snapping somebody every day and you have like a trend or a score, like those things seem like they are the litmus for how cool you are as a human being on earth right now. None of that will matter. None of it will matter. You'll look back I promise you, in your 20s, you'll look back and go, God, that was just silly. Like that was fun, but like that didn't mean anything. Yeah. Who did I help?
No one.
Yeah. I mean, like, well, who did I help with any of that? So.
Yeah. What advice would you give to someone who is trying to get into this industry, media, if they're scared to start, a podcast, or if they're even scared to kind of like go apply for like a job in like journalism or media? Like, what would you tell them?
I mean, look at what you're doing. I mean, first of all, like podcasting is very easy now. You have a very nice thing, and your school offers this opportunity for you to have this equipment. But you and I could be sitting on an iPhone right now. Like, there's lots of ways. So if you're somebody and you don't feel like you have the access to get into media, which is usually people's problems, like where do I even start? Well, start interviewing people in your neighborhood. Start interviewing your priest or your rabbi or somebody in faith. Maybe a senior citizen, somebody, a veteran. Just start talking to people. And that's a great way to start. Internships are awesome. I did that. I went to my local like affiliate station and just said, I'll work for free. Like, be willing to work for free is a great way to kind of get in. And also just have the courage to, you asked me to be on this podcast, and here I am, and we just did it, and we had an awesome conversation. Like, you just did it. Like, and that takes courage. So it's a little bit of all those things. My advice is just stick with it, though, because the tools are there we need it for storytelling. It's really rewarding to tell somebody's story. There's so many great stories out there. I don't just mean news stories and politics and this and that. I mean like people doing good things. Like you can shine a light on somebody doing something good and tell that story with video and production or podcasting, visuals, music, art. That's just a really fun, cool thing to be able to do.
The way I actually started my first podcast with my friend, I'm sorry, I keep like talking about that, but like it's kind of like how I started 8th grade quarantine in my room. I just used my phone. We like wrote up a little script on my computer, and then I had my phone, recorded it, edited it on iMovie, and it's sitting on the internet.
Right. The tools are there for you guys to be able to do that now. I could never do that.
Yeah, and I feel like people are like, oh, I need the fancy camera. I need like this, that. You don't. I recorded from my phone. This is the first time I'm ever like touching a actual podcast setup. Thankfully, my school is able to provide that, but
it's like working out. You don't need to have a fancy gym membership.
No.
You don't need anything. Like you can do a really great workout with like literally nothing.
Yeah, go on a run.
Right. Really your body weight. I mean, that's a great point. You don't need all the fancy equipment to get started.
Just start. Well, I guess that is all the questions I have for you today.
That was super fun, Rashida. I hope anything I said will help somebody out there, and I'm so happy to have been here with you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for being on. Thank you for being my first guest.
Oh my God. It's only going to be uphill from here.
Yeah.
You're going to have awesome guests, and people are going to learn a lot of stuff about career choices and life, and that's really important work.
Thank you so much for being on.
Pleasure's mine.
Do you want to plug anything?
No, I do not. Absolutely do not.
Okay.
No, my name is Carson Daly. You can find me wherever you want to find me, but I was honored to be here with Rashida today, and I hope that you all have an awesome day, and remember that you are awesome.
Well, that is all for today. Again, final thank you, Mr. Mr. Daly, for being on
pleasure.
the podcast. Guys, stay tuned. I have a few exciting guests for the upcoming year, 2024. Have a happy holiday season. I'm your host, Rashida Punawala, signing off.